All right, let's do a quick video. I'm supposed to be up on the roof, tearing my roof out. You can see the light coming in. That's because my roof is half gone, and it needs to be even more than half gone before the end of the day. It was leaking. I hate it, so I just tear into things. Wish me luck. It's not luck; it's skill. I got mad skills. So, yes, September 24th, next Wednesday. I had to look it up. Next Wednesday, the world is going to end. I talk about the world ending on here all the time, and I go into it in gory detail, celebrating how there's no way we can avoid this. But what's happening on Wednesday is something different. And if you haven't heard much about it now, you will eventually. It's a phenomenon, I think, found only in the United States of America, only in the Christians in the United States of America. They believe, and I'm not sure who set the date this time, but it happens frequently enough. They set a date, and on that date, the rapture will take place. What is the rapture? The rapture is, these are images on Google. Like I said, it's been around a long time. The rapture is an event where true believers, Christian true believers, and this is their story, not mine. I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can be about this until I get to where I mention this in my book, and then I'm going to be an absolute fucking savage. So, back in 1830, some guy named Darby, I had to look this up. I mean, you have to look these things up. Like, where did this come from? Back in the 1830s, some guy named Darby decided that what's going to happen to Christians is that there's something that happens when they die and they go to heaven. Some of them go to hell, and I don't know what all. And the Catholics think there's purgatory. There's all this other stuff that goes on. But according to Darby, there are going to be a group of Christians, good, white. I'm filling in the gaps here, but right, you know how it is. Good, white, Protestant Christians that will be physically assumed into heaven, just like Muhammad in the Muslim religion was assumed into heaven. Oh, so was Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was physically assumed into heaven. She didn't get crucified. She didn't even die of old age. She was just physically assumed into heaven. And she's up there looking down on people. So this is a trope in these sky god religions where heaven is in the sky and you want to get there. And so this guy Darby came up with, and look it up if you want to. I'm sure there's a whole Wikipedia page on it. This guy Darby decided in the 1830s that we're not going to wait for the return of Jesus Christ. That's in the book of Revelations, associated with the modern Christian Bible. The Jews, which share part of the Bible, don't believe, they don't have in their canon the book of Revelations that I'm aware of. That's strictly Christian. What's this noise? That is strictly Christian. So, I think my wife just showed up. So, that is strictly Christian. So, he decided that no, we're not going to wait for the apocalypse as mentioned in the book of Revelations. We're not going to wait for that. That's taking too long. It was supposed to happen actually back in the time of Jesus. So you can look it up to find out what the timing was supposed to be. But that was supposed to happen in the time of Jesus. And then it was supposed to happen in the year 1000. I don't know how they picked the year 1000, but the year 1000 was supposed to be the apocalypse. That was a long time ago, right? That's Middle Ages. And that didn't happen. So then they thought, well, it would be the year 2000. And that didn't happen. And there have been, and since the time of Jesus, and since today, right now, there have been all kinds of predictions about when the apocalypse, the unsealing of the seven seals and the seven horned beasts and the whore of Babylon riding on the tiger and the seven angels and all that stuff, that whole book of Revelations thing. That never ever seemed to happen. So by 1830, this guy was like, okay, yeah, forget that whole Revelations thing. Yeah, that may happen in the future. I got something else for you to cling to. good Christians of the right kind will be assumed bodily into heaven. And they will, alongside Jesus and God, sit in witness of the end of the world. And the peculiar thing about the rapture, and let me see if I can pull one of these up because you'll see it better with some of these images. The thing about the rapture is you are assumed bodily into heaven. Whatever you're doing, you're in the shower, right? Then you go to heaven, covered in soap. If you're walking down the sidewalk, then you get lifted into heaven. So you go into heaven. You're not dead. There's no angel with fiery sword. There's nothing. You just get lifted into heaven with your clothes on, with your shopping bag. I don't know what's going on, right? And then there's the left behind. So, and the left behind, there was actually, was it a movie? Was there a movie? Someone help me with this. The left behind, I guess this is here. Leaving rapture culture behind. I guess some people are actually trying to abandon this culture. Some people are trying to abandon this faith. Yeah, sounds good to me. Anyway, why am I even mentioning this, right? I've got one problem, and the problem I have is not the rapture. The problem I have is global heating. So why am I mentioning the rapture, and why am I poking fun at September 24th as a prediction? And of course, then that won't work, and they'll have to have another one, and they'll just keep doing this back and forth. But this is relevant to me because I published a book on this that contains this topic. The book itself is called, you can find it on Amazon. There's a link in the description. It's available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Priced accordingly and priced really cheap. There's a limit. There's a low limit, and I just set it at the low limit. So it's about as cheap as it can be, unless I give it away. Unless I buy it and give it to you, which I have done for some people. In that story, even though that's a story about the real collapse of the world, doesn't involve Armageddon, doesn't involve flaming swords, doesn't involve seven seals, doesn't involve Christianity or Islam or Judaism or heaven or hell or anything else. Judgment, nothing. It just involves the collapse of the human world because of a combination of global heating and a collapse of supply chains, in particular, the collapse of the fossil fuel supply chains. So that's the book. That's what the book is about. And yeah, this is the rapture, folks. This is it. People with their shopping bags and they're going to heaven. Anyway, in the book, spoilers, but this may even encourage you to buy and read the book, right? So go do it. In the book, I have what I call scientific zombies. They are humans. They are zombies in their behavior and their dietary preferences. They eat people. They're cannibal zombies. And where do the cannibal zombies come from? In the collapse of the world. What, is there a virus? Is there an alien bug? Is there something else going on? Is there genetic engineering? Is there nanobots? No, there's nothing like fungus. No. They're rapture Christians. So now I'm being harsh, right? I told you I was going to be harsh. But keep up with me here. Watch what happens. And that's the reason I included the story is what I'm telling you now. And it's important to the book. And it's important to where we all are with regards to the collapse of civilization, which isn't coming on September 24th, although it might. Who knows? But it's in our future, and it's going to be caused by some combination of global heating and a collapse of civilization and a collapse of supply chains. Okay, if you are on the wrong side of science on that day, you're going to be crushed. Mentally crushed. Now, being on the wrong side of science is really easy. Virtually every human being on the planet Earth doesn't understand physics, doesn't understand the Earth dynamics, doesn't understand there is an Earth and that it has dynamics. They understand that there's maybe two seasons, and sometimes it rains, and sometimes the sun is out, and sometimes it's cold, and sometimes it's hot. And that's about their relationship with the Earth dynamic system. If that's all you've got, going for you, then when the Earth system starts murdering people, which it will do, that's physics. That's what physics is going to do. Then there's going to be a whole bunch of people, like everyone, nearly everyone, is going to be really taken by surprise and really, really confused and frightened. And the bunch of people who are most likely to be taken by surprise in the most savage way possible are the Rapture Christians. They're set up for this. They're set up for this because, and I don't even mean the apocalyptic Christians, which is the old school. That goes back, like I say, 1,000 years. The apocalyptic Christians can always say, well, the world didn't end today, maybe it'll end tomorrow. And they just have to wait for the world to end. But the Rapture Christians, there's not going to be an end of the world. They get raptured into heaven first. They're just walking down the street, minding their own business, got bags of groceries, need to pick up the kids at school, and then they get physically raptured into heaven. That's what happens to them. There is no end of the world. There's the end of their time on earth, and then they go to heaven and they get to watch the end of the world, presumably. I'm not really clear on what the theology is behind the rapture, but something like that. They get to stand up there, and then they can passively watch the world being destroyed like it's a reality TV show. So these people, oh, and there's another group of people that are going to be absolutely savaged by the end of the world. I'll mention them next. And I'm not trying to make a parallel. Okay, let me get to that topic in a minute. Because for the Rapture Christians, the beginning of the end starts with them being physically assumed into heaven. That is the signal of the beginning of the end of the world. That's it. They get physically assumed into heaven. They don't have to endure any of this. They don't have to endure the lines at the gas pumps. They don't have to endure the empty shelves at the store. They don't have to endure all the other things you project, right? The rioting, the looting, the fires, the arson, the race riots. They don't have to endure any of that. The signal to them that the world is about to end is when they are physically, with the groceries under their arms, walking to the SUV, right, in the parking lot. They are physically lifted bodily into heaven. So, for these people, when I was writing the book, I realized there's going to be a group of people, and I'm picking on the Rapture fundamentalist Christians because they're an easy group to pick on. It's also an appropriate group because their philosophy is so flagrantly out of alignment with physics that it's easy to point out how savagely disappointed they're going to be. But they're not the only ones. Hold on. There are a lot of people who are in that same boat. There's a lot of belief system around civilization and around Western civilization and around, upper middle class, progressive, industrial, miracle, techno, triumphalism, Western civilization. There's a lot of people who think they are completely out of reach of this. That entire group will find themselves right along with the Rapture Christians completely flummoxed when this comes crashing down. They're just going to be completely gobsmacked, taken by surprise, absolutely blindsided. They're not going to know what to do. In the book, I talk about what happens when the online internet trolling Rapture Christian fundamentalist demagogues are completely taken by surprise. What happens is, and this is the argument, what happens to them is, because they think it's absolutely impossible that anything bad could happen to them, and they are convinced of this, that they just ignore everything. They ignore the entire run-up to day one of my book. They're in day zero. And all the things that are happening in day zero, including a brief run at the Third World War with actual nuclear weapons, all of that just doesn't register because they think they're above it. And of course, above it means they're on their way into heaven. So there's a complete 100% overlap between the Rapture fundamentalist Christians and this entire part of Western civilization that thinks it is the ultimate evolved, God-chosen, perfect expression of human whatever can never be disturbed and never toppled. These two groups absolutely overlap. And they're going to have this, they're going to suffer the same fate. Now, in the book, the Rapture fundamentalist Christians do one thing that helps them survive. When they sense that the world is tottering, they go to their Bible retreat. It's like a summer camp, right? It's up in the hills, not the hills you're thinking, the foothills. Dry grass, easily burns, stinks, flies, animals in pens. It's not what you think. But they have their little retreat there, and so they go there. And then while they're there and they're praying, they're waiting for the rapture, of course, because that's what happens. They're waiting for the rapture, and they're talking about the rapture, and they're blogging online and telling everybody online, you're all stupid, you're all going to suffer, you're all going to burn in hell. Meanwhile, they're waiting for the rapture, because that's what you do when you're telling everyone else they're going to go to burn in hell. You're telling yourself you're going to go to heaven. You're going to watch it all on widescreen TV. So it doesn't happen. They've been lied to. And they've been lying to themselves. And they've been lying to everybody else. But they believe the lie. And so then they have a real problem. There's no food. There's no water. There's no civilization. And they didn't rapture to heaven. Well, of course they didn't rapture to heaven. That's all a fairy tale. The Darby guy came up with it in 1830. And then it got written into something called a reference Bible. Not the real Bible. Not the approved King James, whatever, light Donald Trump Bible. Okay? It's a reference Bible, which is a Bible that you read along with the real Bible. And you read the reference Bible and you read the real Bible. And when you're reading a part of the real Bible, you don't understand it. That's weird. Then you go to the reference Bible and they explain to you what it really means. And so somewhere in there, he started talking about the rapture. Well, what this means, what this part here in the real Bible, it's talking about the rapture. What's that? Tell me more. And so that's where all this fairy tale bullshit got started. And there are people who believe it. And there's more people every day who believe it because they like that to be true. That they're going to get to leave everybody behind. The black people, the brown people, the immigrants, the trans, the progressives, the woke, the intellectuals, the scientists, the global heating, and all the other hoaxes, right? I'm sorry. I'm kind of cramped here because I had to turn away from that bright light behind me. So now I'm kind of working in a corner. And so what happens in the book is nothing happens. Of course it doesn't. It was a fairy tale. So then they have this problem. They're waiting to be raptured. They can't really pretend that they're hoping for the world to return because they're waiting to be raptured. If they start believing that the world will reset itself and go back the way it was, then their belief about the rapture, well, what was that about? Because here the end of the world has happened. The stores are empty. There's no fossil fuels. There's no electricity. There's no first responders, there's no services. That's the end of the world, right? Where's my rapture? So then they have to start trying to find food and trying to find water. But they're a little late to the game. They're like 3 weeks into it, so more like day 20 or day 25. They start trying to survive, right? And through a series of mental gymnastics, they decide that when Jesus is saying, drink of this, for it is my blood, eat of this, for it is my flesh, they kind of go with that, right? They kind of go with that. And so they turn into cannibals. And because they can't find much to eat anymore, because everybody's gone, or they're dead, or there's something, then they don't have much to eat. They get really skinny. They start to lose their minds. They become psychotic. I mean, just try to balance all that if you would. Just imagine how hard that's going to be to balance all that. And so they become psychotic. And then they make their way slowly into the book. And I like how I handled it. And spoilers, it's not spoiling anything. You're not going to buy the book. In the end, they survive. They are attacking other villages, but they're so weak and disorganized, and they're also really dysfunctional. They fight each other all the time. They're always saying, I'm more a believer than you are. It's your fault that the rapture didn't come, and you needed to die and leave the world behind, and the rest of us can go to heaven. They're fighting among themselves all the time, which is what actually happens online, right? You go into these chat rooms and into these Facebook pages, and they're just after each other all the time. Holier than thou and the whole thing. So in the end, they're not really harmful. They're more like they're a harm to themselves. And the protagonist in the book has the chance to kill them all, right? You're cannibals. You're attacking our village. But look, you're not that dangerous. You're just really kind of messed up. And so nothing happens. And they are told to stay away from the village. And they do. And of course, the expectation is they're simply going to die of starvation because there's nothing left to eat. They're cannibals. What does that mean? There's nobody around. All the people around are now behind fences, and they're trying to build villages and grow their gardens and conserve their water and other resources, and they're not looking outward. They're looking inward. And so the cannibal zombies are stuck on the outside looking in, and they would like to be part of that, but they can't be because they're cannibal zombies. And besides which, they're rapture fundamentalist Christians, so they can't be part of regular society. They're waiting for the rapture. And so they're in a really bad place. But anyway, the protagonist in the book has some pity on them, not only doesn't kill them, but actually tries to get some help for them. And they end up being put on buses, fed a meal, thank you very much, and taken to a regional, it's hard to call it a hospital because it's really just a tent city. There's no infrastructure left, okay? It's a tent city where people are being taken who are suffering from PTSD or mental trauma or things like that. Trying to save the last of the people who also include people who have lost their minds. And and then from there on in the book, they're not addressed anymore. Okay? They're taken care of. That's how that whole thread ends, and I think I handled it fine. I had to talk about in the book. I had to talk about the rapture. In the book, I had to talk about the Christians who are going to be, of course, savagely disappointed, of course, because of course. And in the end, it wasn't Mad Max. It wasn't blazing guns and AR-15s. In fact, there's nothing like that in the book at all. There's nothing like that in the book. That's not how it's going to be, folks. Oh my God, a whole nother thread I could talk about. How is it going to be? Read the book. Another group of people who is savagely disappointed by the collapse of civilization is what I refer to in the book as the criminal class. The criminal class is really in air quotes because it's a bunch of people who just didn't have it figured out. And they resort to behaviors that they either saw on TV or they have some inclination that this is what they have to do, and they loot and they rob and they capture people and they try and create a version of civilization that's based on might makes right, right? So the Trump version, that might makes right. The Mad Max version, guns everywhere, bullets everywhere, and then they die. The criminal class just dies. Because the way the criminal class works, and this is a little bit like the Rapture Christians, so there's a lot of overlap here, and that's why they're both in the book. What the criminal class, the criminal class takes advantage of short duration chaos, and they'll even create chaos on a short duration, like a day, an afternoon. And then they loot and they steal and they rob and they murder and they do all this stuff. And then they disappear and they wait for civilization to come back because now they have a 70-inch TV they stole. They have a bunch of money they got out of the ATM machine, and they have, all this other stuff. And they're waiting for civilization to come back so they can enjoy their ill-gotten gains. That's the criminal class. But what if civilization does not come back? What if it really is the end of the human world? Then they are betrayed. They are the least able. They are the people least able to cope in the event of an interruption of civilization. They are the people most eager to take advantage of that. But if it doesn't come back, they are the people least able to survive. Because although they've stolen money and they've stolen appliances and they've taken TVs and they've broken into the Best Buy and stole all the iPhones, they did all this. But all of that requires civilization to work. And you steal an iPhone, what are you going to sell it to somebody? What if there's no cell service? What if there's no electricity to charge the iPhone? You have an iPhone and you can't charge it, and there's no cell service, and you can't call an 800 number to activate the phone and get a cell service and take advantage of your ill-gotten gains. Same thing with your 70-inch TV. You plug it in, there's no electricity. So now you're waiting for the electricity to come back. What if it never does? You've been betrayed. And meanwhile, these people, they're so embedded in a sense of entitled consumerism because they've been deprived of consumerism for so long that they're desperate to participate. And they're so embedded in that mindset of getting this stuff and then taking it home and waiting for civilization to make it all work for you, that they don't understand they have to feed themselves. They have to get water. They have to have shelter. They must get away from the violence. And of course, they've got all the guns and they've got all the bullets and they have all this gang mentality and they have all these things going on. And they're stealing from each other. And they're working out their gang frustrations and they're working out, their frustrations with society, and they're looting and burning and doing all these things. And then in the end, there's no civilization. And they don't have a community. All they have is violence. All they have is theft. All they have is kind of an empty consumer model. Like a lot of other people that have an empty consumer model. At the end of civilization, when there's no supply chains and there's no infrastructure and there's no first responders and you can't even get insulin, your consumer model just went up in smoke, figuratively and possibly literally. So that's another group of people who had absolutely no recourse. And several times in the book, the protagonist, who's keeping the journal, it's journalism, right? It's day 1, day 2, day 3. The protagonist asks, where are all the people? We built our walls, we turned inward, we were ready to defend ourselves, but there's nothing out there. There's no people. Where'd the people go? And those are all the people who refused to cope and understand that it was over. And it's not coming back. And we have the vignette about the brotherhood, right? The rapture Christians who never got their rapture. And there's other discussions about the criminal class that never got their civilization back to enjoy their ill-gotten gains. And then where do these people go? The question is never answered, because it can't be. From the perspective of the people behind the walls who have turned inward and they're just focusing on their children and their water supply and making their gardens and defending the perimeter, and making a resilient community and eating dinners together and having food supply, storing their food, rationing their food. They've turned inward so hard to try and recreate village life that one day they just look outside and there's nothing there. Except they do meet the brotherhood. And the story of what happened to them is really the story of what happened to everybody. They just couldn't get their head out of their ass. They kept waiting for civilization to come back. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited. And then they jumped in the car, and they tried to get gas, and there wasn't any. And so they sat in the freeway, and they waited. And the car ran out of gas, and they got out of the car, and they walked. And they're waiting for civilization to come back. It would be back at the next town. We'll go to the next town, kids, and we'll get a burger. We'll go to the next town, we'll get a hotel room. And it just never happens. And where do they go? Well, what happens to them? It's an absolute mystery. The book is not about those people. Because those people have no story. They have no story. They're gone. And the gone people don't write the history. They don't keep a journal. The gone people are gone. And you can sit on the roof of your house and watch the moon rise and see the beautiful stars in the sky, and you can look out on the landscape and there's no lights and there's no sound and there's no bullets and there's no people. There's just cats catching rats, and that's all there is. That's the only movement. There's no sounds of any kind. Nothing. It's absolutely silent. Where's the people? I don't know. Where'd they go? We'll never know. You can't possibly know. There's no way to know. It'll just be a mystery. The book, it was 100 days. That's the name of the book. It was 100 days. It is not an expected telling of the end of the world. I'm a scientist and an engineer and a student of, the human world. And I'm telling it the way it's going to be. And I'm telling it from the perspective of the people who survive and write the account. And all the rest of them, there's no way to know. So September 24th, the world comes to an end. There you go. Something to look forward to. And, of course, I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe there's a rapture. I don't believe any of it. They just made that shit up. Why do they make these things up? I don't know. They have their ideas. They think they understand how it's going to be. I don't know. I don't get it. What do they intend to accomplish? There was a TV show. Was it a series? Left Behind. A movie. It was a movie. Left Behind. I actually watched it on YouTube. Let's see if I can pull this up. Left Behind. It's Christian. It's preachy. It's cringe, right? Left Behind. Left Behind. Amazon.com. Left Behind. Who is this? Nicolas Cage? Left Behind. Yeah, it's a movie. And they're all like left behind. I guess it was a book too. That makes sense. It was a book first and then it was a movie. And I don't think it was maybe it was also a series. I got to be careful here because that's what happens, right? First there's a book and then there's a movie and then there's a series and they just milk it for all it's worth. Well, it ain't happening, folks. But I'm telling you, there's an entire subcult of Christianity that is so certain this is happening, they have it scheduled for September 24th, 3 days from now. Left Behind. After the rapture. And like the Brotherhood in the book, these people don't understand why they were left behind. I went to church. I was a good Christian. I prayed. I went every day. Yeah, I honored my marriage. I was good to my parents. I didn't swear. And why was I left behind? So that's the drama of the movie, the book, and everything else. Why was I left behind? I thought I was one of those people that was going to go to heaven. Well, none of you dumbasses are going to heaven. Not bodily, not like Mary, mother of Jesus, not like Muhammad. You're not going anywhere, okay? You're stuck here on this earth with the rest of us. And my advice would be start fixing some shit, okay? Because you're gonna be stuck here along with the rest of us, and some of us are trying to figure out how we're gonna make villages. And when we make villages, guess what? We're gonna put up walls, and you're not gonna be able to get in. And then you're stuck on the outside looking for something to eat. Yeah, and you're still waiting for the rapture. It's in the book. I've already predicted it. Figure your shit out, Nimrod. Otherwise, you're gonna become cannibal zombies. If you don't think that's possible, read the book. Read the book. That's why I wrote it, for fuck's sake. I didn't write it for my benefit. I wrote it for your benefit. Read the book. So dumb. Anyway, that's it for me. I gotta get back up on the roof. God damn it. It's gonna rain on Wednesday. And I got a hole in my roof the size of a bus. I'm a savage, right? But you knew that already. I'm a fucking savage. I tore the roof off my house. Tore it off. Completely. Light is streaming into the house. And I gotta get up there and fix it. I love my life. I love getting on YouTube. It was 100 days. Links into the description to Amazon. Buy the book. It's cheap. I priced it cheap deliberately. Read the ebook. It's $3. Buy the book. And write a review. I'd appreciate it. And come back here and leave me a like and subscribe if you want to hear anything else. or unsubscribe. If you're a Rapture Christian, although after the 24th, I guess you're going to have to subscribe again because it didn't work, did it? Not my fault it didn't work. It's your fault it didn't work. Because what you're wanting isn't possible. Why do they do it? I don't even know why they do it. I'm done. Goodbye. I got a hole in my roof. God damn it. Good luck with the rapture. I'll see you on the 25th. And in the meantime, everyone else, don't die.